Hello, fellow beings. This is Helen Zuman, welcoming you to Undercurrents, a podcast covering taboo topics, the unseen, and the deeper stories lurking beneath the surface ones. In this episode, I talk with Brandon Day, an old friend from my Zendik days, about divining, or accessing information from sources you can't see. I started divining last summer with Brandon's help. If you're a diviner yourself, or just curious about other ways of knowing, this conversation will give you lots of food or medicine for thought. Hi, Brandon. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Okay, so today we are going to be talking, we'll be focusing on divining. We might go other places, but that's the idea. So I want to start out just really simply by asking you, what is divining?
Yeah, thank you. So divining, I define divining as the ability or the art of gathering information from the unseen world. So the unseen being, it can be when I'm water divining, of course I can't see the water that's hundreds of feet beneath my feet. And also, if I'm in a grocery store and I'm trying to access what's a food for me, then I'm tapping into the unseen part of me to see what's a food. So, yeah, divining is accessing information from the unseen world.
And how does divining differ from dowsing? As I recall, when I first started talking to you about divining, I think you were calling it dowsing, and then you changed. So what's the difference, and why do you use the term divining and not the term dowsing?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing. See, yeah, I used to call them both the same, or kind of interchangeably. Sometimes I would use the word divining. Sometimes I would use the word dowsing. And what happened for me is I just noticed that there's a lot of confusion in the community of dowsers and diviners. And so I started to really look at this confusion and try and point out, put my finger on some of the reasons for all of this confusion, with there being different schools of thought. Basically, for me, if this is a science, then there shouldn't be so much division among the scientists. So one of the things that happened is I went to my old man neighbor's house, and he's got this big, giant, old dictionary. Mm-hmm. So I looked up divining and divination, and it was basically what I'm telling you, which is the practice of gathering information from unseen sources. And then dowsing, and it's interesting because DOWSING said CDOUSING. And so DOWSING and DOUSING, not very long ago, a mere 50 years ago in this dictionary, I think, we're a little older now, so I guess it was probably a 60-year-old dictionary. Mm-hmm. And but DOUSING and DOWSING had basically the same definition. So one of those definitions is to cover up, to submerge something in something that's foreign to itself. Mm-hmm. So like if you were going to douse a fire or douse wood and kerosene or something like that, or if you were going to douse someone in water, then you are covering them up with something that's foreign to them. And it also meant to strike or to hit. And that was the one that really turned my soul to taking a look at this thing. Like, it really, really struck me that that we would use a term of gathering information, that term would be synonymous with to hit something, as in to strike. And I know I've heard this from people. Oh, we struck water. We struck gold, right? Mm-hmm. We struck oil, you know? Mm-hmm. And that meaning to hit, you know? And, oh, well, to hit, well, it means, you know, I know that there are positive aspects of hitting. Like the one that comes to my mind is in Vegas, you know, when you say hit me, not on the street, but in the casino. And, so there are positive aspects to that, but it was just very striking to me that that we're using that term as a synonymous way of saying that we're gathering information. Because for the diviner, even with water, you know, we can just stick with water. For the diviner, like the diviner is finding it, then the well digger is striking it, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So why, if we are scientists, you know, why would we be using that term? And so to me, it brings about confusion when we confuse the striking or the covering up of something to simply gathering information. And so that's why I began to use strictly the word divining, because it means very clearly to gather information. And as a divining scientist, that's what I'm most interested in. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's why I use that word.
Mm-hmm. But before I started talking to you about divining, I was familiar with the concept, with the idea of, you know, having a pendulum. I remember reading about that, you know, in books like set in the 70s. And so as I understand it, there's sort of maybe a traditional way of divining using a pendulum that is different from what you do. Can you just try, if you agree that there is a traditional sort of mainstream way of divining with the pendulum, can you describe what that is and how it works?
Yeah. And I think this is something we could kind of pour over for a little while, which would be nice, because there's a lot of differences. And I want to first off say that if it wasn't for the pioneers in this art form, you know, I would have never been able to reach where I am. So my original teachers, there's one, her name is Hannah Kroger, mm-hmm. and she wrote this book. And when I say a teacher, I mean I read her work, and she was my teacher through her work. Mm-hmm. And but I never went to the Kroger Institute, which does exist. You know, I wish I could plug it, but I really don't know much about it or what their website is or whatever. But I know that Hannah Kroger does have an institute. Mm-hmm. And she was a German scientist, nurse, and I guess you would call her a nun or a priest or something like this. Mm-hmm. And she wrote this book in specific. The one that really caught my attention is God Helps Those Who Help Themselves. Mm-hmm. And so that was a book that really played a big part in me seeing through someone's eyes that we kind of spoke the same language. And so she was basically saying that we are commanded by God to be able to discern things for ourselves. And so I read her work, and there's a gentleman, an awesome guy. He's just a great guy. And even now, we share similar circles. His name is Raymond Grace. And Raymond Grace wrote this book. He has a number of books, but I'm trying to think of the name of his book. I just had it. Hang on one sec. It's called Techniques That Work for Me. And this book, Techniques That Work for Me, just had all kinds of information that was very, very different than what I do, and still very, very valuable. That really helped guide me, because it helped me to feel that I'm not powerless to detoxify my foods, to go into a grocery store, or be able to sit in front of food, and basically using the pendulum to kind of do what people would normally do in prayer, which is bring the food into harmony with the body. Mm-hmm. And so these guys, they both taught a system, different and similar systems of removing toxins from foods, of finding basically what's a food and what's not a food, and then removing chemicals from the foods through the act of will, using the will and the spin of the pendulum to measure the activity of the will and the physical universe. So this was my original teaching, was to basically go into, and I keep using food because that's the main thing that I started with, was finding foods and then working with the foods. So what I would do is I would sit over a food with my pendulum and go through a process, and I'll describe that in a moment. But I would go through a process of removing negative energies and negative entities, non-beneficial energies and entities, and things from the food, and then I would charge the food to its highest appropriate life force level, and then charge it to its highest appropriate energy level. Mm-hmm. And basically, in that system, they taught that a spin of these systems, they would teach that the clockwise spin is kind of winding things in to foods, or anchoring energies into foods or objects or whatever. The counterclockwise is like a unwinding of things. And so that's one aspect that they taught. Now, I really should backtrack and say that before getting to that point, the original thing that I did learn with dowsing and the original divining back when I hadn't delineated what's the difference between the two, is the information system that most current dowsers and diviners use is a yes, no, maybe system, and then they use charts. So there's all kinds of dowsing charts out there, or divination charts. I see, the thing is, I can keep saying dowsing and divining interchangeably, because to the whole world besides me that I'm aware of, they use the word interchangeably. Mm-hmm. And so there's some books are called, divination and divining charts and stuff, and divination, how to divine, and some things are how to douse and dowsing and things like this, and dowsing charts, but it's a lot of the same material. Mm-hmm. Well, in this system, they generally utilize a yes, no, maybe method, okay, of finding information. So if you're using the pendulum for yes will swing to and from your body, as if in the way that a swing would swing to and from your body if you were pushing somebody in a swing. So that would be the yes. The no would be if the pendulum swung parallel to your body in the same way that those balls that you that are hanging on strings, and you take them and swing one to the side, and they just kind of go tick tock, like or even you could just say like the pendulum on an old clock. Yeah, it goes side to side.
Yes.
So that would be a no answer on a pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
And then a maybe would be the diagonal between the two.
Okay.
So in general, that's what people use still. So with the body, a lot of people are very into body dowsing or body divining.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the most part, that's they pretty much don't use divining for the body for some reason. They use dowsing. They usually say body dowsing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've heard anybody say body divining. And so with body dowsing, if your body moves towards something, then it's yes or good for you. If you're holding a stone or a crystal, or if you're holding an orange and it's good for you, then your body will lean forward. If it's bad for you or not for you, then your body will lean backwards. Mm-hmm. So these are systems that really that are the way that I started, okay? But when I would check, I just had certain problems that I would run into. I always use the example of the Snickers because I just love Snickers. I really love Snickers. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've eaten one in about 15 years mm-hmm. Because of the pain that used to come about when I would eat them. Mm-hmm. And but I would do this whole ritual of like, I would go into the store, I would check the Snickers. It always said it was good for me, right? No matter how much I just felt like I don't care if it's good or bad. Last time this damn thing caused me pain, it can't be good for me. Is it good for me? And it was always like, yes. Mm-hmm. So then I would bring the Snickers home. I'd pray my ass off over it. And I would pray into it. I would remove any and all negative whatever's from it, energies, entities, frequencies, and then I would charge it to its highest appropriate life force level, energy level. I would harmonize it with my body brain system, and then I'd eat the damn thing, and it would cause me pain again. Uh-huh. So basically, that system is what I call a linear system. So by linear, I mean yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad. Maybe doesn't make it into a nonlinear system. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so that is because you're asking me, the question was, what's the difference between what other people do and what we do in this system, correct?
Yeah.
So most people are still dealing with a linear language. And so what the linear language being yes, no, good, bad, and then maybe, which, basically means, I don't know, or something like that. Maybe or not now means, what that means, maybe or not now. But it still is linear. So what I began to learn, and the way that I talk with people about this, is that we are accessing a nonlinear dimension within ourselves to gain this information. It's a nonlinear part of me that knows where water is, right? Like, because you, Helen, could call me right now and say, is there water on this piece of land? I could go to a map system, check that piece of land, and tell you if there's drinkable, potable water on that land. And and it could be anywhere on this planet or another planet. It doesn't matter. And, and I could tell you basically how deep it'll be and stuff. And then I'd have to come, of course, to the land and, show you precisely where to drill and stuff like that. So this is accessing information from an incredible part of ourselves that's just not bound by time and space and all of the rules of reality as most people agree on it to be. Mm-hmm. So what I began to really see is that we are accessing information from a nonlinear dimension within ourselves, and we're commanding it to speak a linear language. Like you say yes, no, like okay, you who has the information within me, I want you to speak to me like this. When the pendulum's going to swing like this whenever whenever it's a yes. The pendulum's going to swing like this whenever it's a no, because one of the things about these systems is we do program the pendulum, and basically all of these systems. I even teach people to program the pendulum in the system that I teach, even though that's not always necessary, because I can ask people, hey, can you check your pendulum for this and tell me what it does? And a lot of times, just the body system is set up to naturally divine in the way that I teach. In the same way, a lot of people can hold a pendulum in front of them for the first time and say, show me a yes. And then the pendulum will swing back and forth toward them. Show me a no. And the pendulum swings side to side. Show me a maybe. And then it swings at the diagonal. But we all also do teach that if it doesn't do anything, then program it. Swing your hand. Say, this means yes, this means no, this means maybe. Okay, now let's move forward. And then you have a program that's set within you. So basically, the way that I describe this is it's as if we are in a very limited room. Like our conscious mind is in a room. And outside of this room is the whole world, the whole universe. And there's a part of us that's connected with the whole universe. And that's the part that we use when we're divining to gain information. We tap into that part of us that's connected with everything to get the information. That's how I can tell you, if you're, in Vermont or, whatever, and I'm all the way out in California or Hawaii or whatever, or I'm in Japan and you're in Europe, and I can tell you, basically, if you give me the coordinates of the land or whatever, or you're even just standing on the land, focusing on it, I can tell you if you're going to find water there, mm-hmm. and about how deep it'll be. Mm-hmm. So the reason I can tell you that is that there's a part of me that's connected with all of that. So the difference in the approaches in this science and the other sciences being the linear sciences of divining and dowsing that speak the yes, no, maybe method and use the charts and things, is that that's a linear system. And so the charts, it's a little complicated for me to explain to you what the charts are. I'm going to try and formulate a way to explain that. But in the system that I teach, there's harmony and disharmony. The pendulum swings always for everybody, North Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, on the Moon, on Saturn, on Mars, on Venus. It spins counterclockwise for harmony. It spins clockwise for disharmony. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so the reason that part of the beauty of this system, I'll put it that way, is that for one thing, I'm never asking a question. Really. Like, even when I ask questions, they're not pure questions. I'm not coming from the place of making up the story that I don't have the answer. Because when you have a question, you inherently are saying, I don't have the answer. Well, who the hell does have the answer? Does this crystal have the answer that's sitting in my hand? No. The answer is coming from within the really it comes through the heart and translates through the arm, which translates through the hand, and then through the pendulum. So you're really reading the inner dimension of yourself that's connected with everything. So why would I ask a pure question if I'm the one who I'm asking for the answer?
Mm-hmm.
So this system that I teach, it utilizes the word harmony and disharmony as an identification method. What I teach is an identification method. I don't really, at least in the beginning, I don't teach anybody how to change anything from what it is. I teach an identification science, and then I teach the kind of philosophy behind the science. So, like, let's say in the linear system, you would say, okay, well, I remove any and all non-beneficial entities or whatever from the Snickers bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the pendulum starts swinging in one direction. Well, and the system that I utilize, I would take the, I hate to use the word Snickers bar because I can't, even think about eating those right now.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, if I ask a question, is there anything within me that doesn't belong? Then I'm asking a question, but it's not a pure question. I'm actually looking for something, anything within me that doesn't belong to me. Because the philosophy of this system says if something doesn't belong to you, you can let it go. If it doesn't belong to you, it doesn't belong to you. And nothing that belongs to you could ever be taken from you. So even my question is not actually a pure question. I'm simply looking to identify if there's anything in this body that doesn't belong in the body. And then from there, I begin checking where in the body it is. I might check what the chemical composite of what it is that's stuck in my body that doesn't belong, or stuck in this body that doesn't belong. And then I begin a removal process. But the whole thing involves, I'm never asking a yes-no question. I'm always checking to see what's in harmony, in this case with the body, what's not in harmony with the body. And then from there, the philosophy of this system is what drives the system. So once I identify what's here that doesn't belong here, then automatically by defining it and delineating, okay, this is what belongs here, this is what doesn't belong here. If it doesn't belong here, then it can leave. So it's a very simple act of will that helps one to identify with the part of ourself that has access to all of this nonlinear information. The easiest one to explain is the water. So I don't really ask, is there water there? I simply go within, and I have my reference points within. And so my reference point would be like water that wants to join with humanity, water that is drinkable and potable, as they call it, and wants to join the world, wants to be a part of the person who's calling me and asking me this question's life. And so I have that, the reference points are already within me. And so that's another big difference between the system that I use and the system that, the systems that other people use. They use charts. I believe and teach that we are just the highest supercomputers in this world, like even the quantum computers and things, the way that they're connecting to each other now in other dimensional space and things, these quantum computers aren't anything compared to us. They only really mimic in ways parts of what we automatically can do. So the use in charts is to have everything right in front of you. They're an excellent teaching tool. But for me, I have what I call a quantum catalog within me. So I already have a lot of reference points within me that I can just check this for. I can check that for. I can, you could line up precious metals and I could go through the periodic table within me and check to see what these precious metals are. Is this pure gold? Is there anything in this gold that isn't gold? And so the biggest difference that I'm speaking about right now is there's an external charts that you can use to access things for, but I talk to people about setting up their own quantum catalog within them. Like one of the basic ones that I start with is if you're going into a store to identify a food, you have to be very specific about what you mean by food, because the ego means one thing by food, which is why I was led over and over again to the Snickers, because for some reason, this ego loves Snickers. I don't even know what that's about. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, it would cause me pain, slight psychosis, and, and overall, it wasn't very fun. Mm-hmm. So I programmed within myself, when I say food, I mean medicine, period. Like food and medicine are the same thing. Either it's going to heal me or it's going to be a poison. So I have two words when I'm looking for a food that I'm checking for. Basically, my basic first two words that I'm checking for is food, and again, if it's a food, then the pendulum spins counterclockwise, or poison. If it's a poison, then the pendulum spins counterclockwise in harmony with poison. Mm-hmm. So that's probably a long answer to what you were saying, to what you were asking. I have more. I could definitely go on, but do you have any questions about what we went through so far?
Okay. So you're talking about looking for food, and so you're thinking there's the two options for what something could be are medicine and poison. You also mentioned reference points inside you. So when you're checking for food, is there a particular reference point within that you're using to make this discernment between the poison and the medicine?
Yes. So the reference point is food. So basically, one of the things that everybody really, all of the modern day masters of divining will tell you that, and I'm sure the masters of the past too would say the same thing. You have to be able to think one thought at a time. Mm. So that one thought is your reference point that you are then checking with. So for me, I like the word food because it's a short word. Another point in this is that what we teach in the Institute is that thought forms are the beginning of creation, of your creation. So they actually have form. They have texture. They have content. They have molecular structure, if you will, or maybe you would say magnetic gravitational structure. Mm-hmm. And so I literally create the word food in my mind. And in that creation, I know what I mean. I've already programmed within me. When I say food, I mean medicine, period. I'm not asking, is this food a medicine? I'm saying when I say food, I mean medicine. I can only eat two things, food or poison.
Right.
So it makes it very clear. Then your reference point is food or poison. So when I produce the word food in my mind, then I should be able to hold my pendulum and it starts spinning by itself in the counterclockwise direction as I lock into that word food. That word food becomes, my whole world becomes food within. And then the pendulum is spinning counterclockwise to say the pendulum is a mechanism of saying, okay, everything is in the pendulum or the divining or everything is in harmony with this food word right now. Okay, so it's like being locked into something like a missile, and the pendulum is saying, okay, we're locked in, target locked. Right. So then the reference point of food, then I can be, let's say, in a grocery store. I just have that word in mind, food. Then I can go to the produce section, like the whole produce section, and create the word food in my mind. And then sort of I take with my mind or with my hand, and I just slightly go toward the produce section, in a way asking, is there food over here? But I'm not actually asking, is there food here? I'm making sure that I'm locked into one word, which is food. And then I check that section to see if there's anything over in that section that's in harmony with the thought form that I just created and that I'm currently creating, which is food. So I'm checking to see, is anything in this section in harmony with food for this one? You know, I don't care what is a food for another one, because what's a food for me today might be a poison tomorrow. So I'm never really checking for other people unless I'm shopping for, you know, my partner or a dinner party or something like that. Then I might work to find foods that are in harmony with everybody. But that gets quite complicated to do that kind of thing. And even in its complication, it is simple. But this thing is about, you know, a whole Lego structure is pretty simple. When it comes down to it's all built one brick at a time. But you know, we'll just start with the bottom bricks for now.
Right.
So I'm making sure that my pendulum has a very nice strong lock on the word food, and then I can check this section or this store. I don't even have to go into the store if I check the whole store from the outside, and the pendulum starts spinning clockwise or in disharmony with the whole store when it comes to food. That means there's nothing in there for me right now in this moment. So from there, if there is food, I can walk into the store again with that one word in mind, food, and say, okay, well, is it on this hemisphere of the store? Is it on this hemisphere of the store? It being the food.
Right.
So I'm still holding the word food, and I just lean my pendulum to the right. Like, over here? Nope. Over here? Yep. Okay. This aisle? Nope. This aisle? Nope. This aisle? Yep. Okay. Go down. Is it on the right side or the left side of the aisle? And it's amazing because I've just found, because I really love to travel, I've found certain consistencies that they're just like, I'll find the same item in a store quite by surprise. Like, I've never been to this store, never been to this town, you know, never even been to that kind of store in a lot of cases. And then all of a sudden I'm brought to this one food bar because I'm like, okay, well, I do that whole system. This store has a food. It's in this aisle. It's on this side of the aisle. I start checking racks. Those, you know, they're all in 4-foot racks. And I start checking racks. and then I check shelves, and then I narrow it all the way down to this one food. And when you have the quantum catalog set up within you, this is all quick. Mm-hmm. So to come back to your question, the difference between this system and other dowsing systems is that in other dowsing systems, you go with the food that you prefer, and then you change it into whatever you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you go like, okay, I want watermelon. So you just find like the best watermelon for you, and then you go about removing all these things from it, and then stacking these other energies into it, which are like the energies for you. So, and I'm not saying or downing that system. It's a system that works perfectly for a lot of people. And when I checked how accurate that system was for me, it was about, now let me check again. 97% accurate for me.
Uh-huh.
But it was that 3% was something that just made me see there's a problem here. Yeah. A science should be 100%. You know, there's a problem. So now I don't really care what foods I prefer or what things I'm going to put in my mouth that I prefer. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not really ever looking to change anything. I'm looking to identify what is the perfect energetic food for me right now. Then I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do a bunch of work to clear a bunch of energy from the thing and, you know, do all this stuff. So that's why I say this is an identification method. Divining is identifying. Dowsing has to do with striking. It has to do with covering something up with something that's foreign to it, mm-hmm. you know? And a lot of people are very good at that. I mean, you know, I've never met anybody or done any controlled experiments where, like, you know, these yogis, they like form rose petals or whatever out of their hand. I think, anyway, at least that's what I'm told they do. I don't know. So people can make something out of nothing, apparently. Right. And, you know, and people can change things to be one thing to another. I've never met anyone that could turn a piece of paper into an elephant, period. Mm-hmm. I never have. I've never even met, God bless them, I love cockroaches and stuff, but I've never even met anybody who could turn a piece of paper or an elephant into a cockroach. Mm-hmm. Or someone who, with their mind, could turn a piece of aluminum foil into sand or salt.
Right. So you're talking about identifying food, and food is a physical thing. So I'm wondering then about the process of identifying actions that are in harmony, or identifying decisions, pathways, like entities you might want to interact with, the people you might want to interact with. How does that work? How can you use your method of divining to make decisions and identify, like, you know, actions and interactions that are in harmony with you?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's kind of trim this down a little bit. Can we stay away from entities and stuff for now?
When I said entities, I didn't mean demons and such. I meant more like a business, a corporation, an organization. That's what I meant.
Got it.
But we can certainly leave those out. But I just want to make clear what I mean. My prosaic definition of entities.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's stick with. We'll still trim this down a little bit. Let's stick with actions.
Okay.
And if you could just, I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted because my fire's about to go out, and it's my only source of heat, and it's very cold here today. So can we hang on for just a moment and let me throw some wood on the fire?
Sure. I'm going to pause. Okay, we're back. We're talking about actions.
Yes. So in defining what is a action to take, We have to, the reference point for that is the thing to be clear on. So again, back to the Snickers bar, what's good for me led me to the Snickers bar because it's so undefinable. What the hell is this me that I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Which me am I right now? Am I coming from the ego? Am I coming from the higher self? Am I coming from, the divine inner child? Who the hell is this me? So it's the same thing when we talk about what job is right for me, Then we're looking again at the linear thing, which is, okay, so now we're into the right, wrong thing. And all of this stuff. And this is how things get confusing. So for actions, I like the reference point of health, and I like the reference point of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I use them together, health and wealth.
Yeah.
But that's kind of big. Like because you're creating one whole thought form that says health and wealth. That's kind of a big thought form to create and then hold on to. Mm-hmm. So health to me is pretty perfect. If I'm choosing which park that I want to go walk in, I've got Penny Park. I've got Dollar Park. I've got this trail. I've got that trail A, B, C, D.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's much easier for me to first create the word health, check, make sure that my pendulum has a really nice lock on the word health, which means that my pendulum is spinning very nicely, nice and strong in the counterclockwise direction when I'm focusing on health. Mm-hmm. I even like to move the pendulum all around, like kind of up and down the body, and let it really harmonize with health, mm-hmm. with health all the way up through the brain and through my legs, my feet, and just kind of harmonize my whole being with health. And then I can even, like, let's say I'm looking at a whole city or a whole state, right? Mm-hmm. And deciding where I want to walk. Well, I can just break that into quadrants. I cut a line in the middle. I'm still checking for health, and I check for up here in health. Like, in other words, like the top quadrant or the lower quadrant for health. Oh, it's in the lower quadrant. Then half of the whole map is cut out automatically. Mm-hmm. Or if it's just A and B, I either want to walk in Penny Park or Dollar Park. Then, because those are the two that are close to me, then I just use the word health, and then I check A for health, and then I check B for health. Mm-hmm. And if neither one of those really feel that good, I might want to look around and see if there are any other options. Because that one little one that you wouldn't have gone to has that one little secret there for you, that one little key. You might have that one little healthy interaction with a squirrel that teaches you all about life and beauty. Mm-hmm. You just never know what's going to come, and that's another. I don't want to get too into this unless you want to right now, but that's another beautiful thing about using a non-linear language and not forcing anything, is that you get to remain in the mystery. Uh-huh. It really enhances the mind of a child within you, because you don't have to know very much at all in this system. You just have to have reference points to get you where you want to go. Then you don't have to know how to get where you want to go. You just have your reference points of set up. Okay, well, I want to tend toward eating food. I want to tend toward doing actions that, or working with businesses that create health and wealth. Mm-hmm. This is very simple. then you know that, okay, well, I just don't drink this kind of orange juice. I drink this kind of orange juice. Well, why? It's not what I prefer. The other one tastes better. Sunny Delight tastes better, but I drink Tropicana. And I don't just drink any Tropicana. I drink this particular Tropicana. And I'm not saying that, I'm just using them as an example.
Right.
Because what you've found is that today, this Tropicana works in harmony with your health. So you know why you're drinking what you're drinking. You know why you're eating what you're eating. You're not going and saying, well, I prefer Sunny Delight, so I'm just going to remove all the non-beneficial stuff on it, and I'm going to make it right for me.
Right.
So this is a very direct and passive system in a way. I mean, you aren't passive, but the mechanism of accepting that there is something here for me, I don't have to make something right for me. Right. That, in a way, that there's the yang quality of this technique is the creation of the reference point. The yin part is accepting the answer, that there's a perfect world right here for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to yang make everything into what I want it to be.
Right. And do you find that while divining, you're often surprised by the harmonies you find, like that using this technique leads you in directions that you would not have gone in just
yes.
your own preferences?
All the time. And that's part of the beauty of it is I literally don't care anymore what I like.
Mm-hmm.
Because I already know what I like. There's no adventure there.
Right.
I know what I like. I know what I prefer. There's no excitement there. There's no mystery there. Like, I already know that,
mm-hmm.
And so this system, I'm always discovering something new. I'm always finding something I wasn't expecting, and it's really, that question that you just asked, that to me is probably the biggest, or at least in the top two biggest gifts of this technique. The first one, just being able to have the ease of knowing that I can access information on my own.
Right.
The second one being that I can really enjoy that by not knowing. I don't have to know much. Then there's all kinds of adventures out there for me. I mean, do you mind if we get into something just a little esoteric right now?
Sure. And I would also like to ask you to
stay away from that.
Well, I wanted to ask you to if you're willing to give some examples of big surprises you've encountered through divining, or adventures, unexpected adventures you've gone on as a result of it.
Oh, great! Well, that's what I was going to tell you. That's
great.
That's the esoteric thing.
Oh, here we go.
I'm going to offer out. Okay, so one of the things that I like doing is, I live in the area known as the Southwest, and there's just an immense amount of cool places out here. Mm-hmm. Right next door to me, I live in Geronimo's neighborhood. This is all Geronimo's in Cochise territory here. And I mean, it's just the most beautiful places. It's like it's hard to choose where you want to go. And oftentimes you want to go where you've been because it's so awesome there.
Yeah.
There's all these other places, that are everywhere. So I went on this adventure, and have you ever heard of something called soul retrieval?
The term, but that's about it. I don't know what it is.
Well, I've heard the term, but I didn't really know what it was. Mm-hmm. But basically what that is that there are parts of you that we basically became, the idea behind soul retrieval is that we've become fragmented, and there are parts of us out there around us, in here, whatever you want to call it. There are parts of us that we can gather up to become more and more whole and more complete as the complete composite of who we actually really are. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I wasn't even aware that I was going on a soul retrieval thing when I began this. That's the thing about this system. Is what I was aware of is that I wanted that I would go to a map and choose an area that had something for me. There was some gift there for me. I didn't know whether I was going to be digging up gold or like literal physical gold or what the hell I'd be doing. If I'd be meeting, they have crazy shit that happens out here. I mean, people talk about seeing like pterodactyls and shit out here. You just never know. Like, I mean, seriously, I've never seen one, so I don't know. But I like to, whatever people's truth are, I just like to say, oh, wow, that's interesting. Because what do I know? Yeah. So I didn't know what I was going to find. I just had no idea. But I found this place on a map that I knew that, okay, well, it's going to be somewhere right here. So first off, my reference point was an area that has a gift for me. So an area with my gift, mm-hmm. right? And so I start checking all of the forest around, and I end up finding this one particular forest. And I think I actually said too, on public land. That was part of my command in this. I don't want there to be a gift that I'm going to get, shot at for, I want it to be safe. So I went to the place that I had divined on the map. And basically, I'm driving down the road. I was like, well, this is where I know it is this road. So I'm checking the road as I approach it. And boom, there's the road. My pendulum is spinning in big harmony with mm-hmm. this road. Mm-hmm. I start going down this road. Soon enough, I'm on dirt roads. I've got choices, left, right, straight. I'm making the choices as I go. I'm focusing on this gift. I'm getting disharmony on the places that I don't need to turn. I'm getting harmony on the places where I do need to turn. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm stopping the car and checking. Sometimes I'm rolling and checking.
Yeah.
And I found myself way out there, way out there. And I come to the end of this road and I park the car. And I'm like, okay, well, so it's up, and, I park the car and I start checking. Is it this way? No. Is it this way? No. Is it this way? Yes. So I'm like, okay, so it's up the creek bed, this old dry creek bed. Mm-hmm. I start going up the creek bed, up this creek bed, long ways up this creek bed. And I'm like, geez, is it, how many steps away is it? And so I start using this method to just check how many steps. Under 100, no. Under 200, no. Under 300, yes. I think it was more than 300. I think it was like somewhere under 500 steps from where I was at that point, feeling like, holy smack, I'm way out here now. So I start kind of counting my steps and checking my direction as I'm going. And I come to this one spot. And I get to this one little spot. And I'm checking around. I'm like, is it here? No. Is it here? No. It's right here. Right here in this one spot. And then I was a little confused, like, okay, like, should I start digging? No. Like, physically digging? So I'm checking. Is it underground? No. It's not underground. It's right here. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm just going to sit here then. Because first off, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And, so I'm just going to sit here. And these wonderful little ants start crawling on me. And they're not biting me or anything. They're just wonderful and just such gentle, nice ants. Mm-hmm. And because I'd already been, I had like camped the day before and kind of near this place, and done a big hike, and I was fasting and stuff, and because usually when I get away from people and in the woods, I just have zero desire to eat anything. Mm-hmm. And so I'd been fasting and, doing my thing and stuff. So I'm exhausted, and I just sit in this place, and these ants start crawling on me. And I'm like, wow, these guys are really cool. And all of a sudden I go into this vision state of remembering this past life. And a lot of people do like these past life things. I'm not really into past lives, it's not my thing. Mm-hmm. I'm into this life, and I've just always been that way. A lot of people talk about who they were in past lives. It's like we were all emperors, empresses, like nobody was a fucking slave or anything in a last life, right. Or like something awesome, because this one kind of sucks. No, I'm just playing, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I've just never really been into that kind of thing. But that's the thing, is this system guides you to things that you wouldn't necessarily ever be into.
Right.
So I'm sitting there, and these ants are crawling on me. And I just close my eyes, and I just feel so relaxed in this sandy riverbed. And I just close my eyes, and I just feel like, okay, these ants are cool. They're not going to, bite me or anything like that. And I just start to have this vision that's like a dream vision. And I remembered, I was of course, like a prince, right? And, but in this land, we were all princes and stuff, like princes, princesses, queens, kings, emperors, empresses, sultans, whatever you would call us, pharaohs. We were all noble. Mm-hmm. And, living in these fantastic, like earth marble palaces and stuff like this. And the earth was shaking, like the earth was shaking really badly, and I was really, really upset. I was really, really upset, and I was upset because we were at another world cataclysm, like the world was being destroyed again, mm-hmm. And I had this knowing that this was happening again, that again humanity had reached a place where we had to reset and start over again. Mm-hmm. And then in this vision, these ants were like 3 feet tall, and they came and took me beneath the surface of the earth to go live in the inner earth. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I had left part of my soul. I left on the surface of the earth because of the deep, great sadness that I felt about us destroying ourselves again. Mm-hmm. And and so in this great gift for me was for me to recover that part of myself that I left behind in that life. Mm-hmm. So that was the gift. And I went there and I got it. And this is shit people pay shamans big money for. Uh-huh. People pay people money to guide them on soul retrievals. I just guided myself not even knowing what a soul retrieval was like that, and use this divining technique to lead me there, mm-hmm. where I could heal a part of me that was unhealed from some past life a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And there's no way in hell that I could have ever found that without this divining technique. And the reason I wanted to tell this story is because it really exemplifies the great adventure in this technique. This kind of thing happens all the time. Like the same energy happens when you go into a grocery store just not knowing what's the food for me today. You know, where's my gift? I know there's a gift here. I already detected there's a gift here. It's in this store. I know it's in this store. What is it? Mm-hmm. I just want to know. I don't care what it is. I don't even want to know what it is. I like ahead of time because I want the great mystery to lead me there.
Right.
So I also did an experiment with a dear friend of mine, and I led her on the same kind of thing. I found an area. I on a map. I asked her if she'd be willing to take a trip with me, so that I could see if this was possible for other people who didn't know anything about it. I didn't tell her what this was about. I just said, you know, I just want you to go with me to a place. I don't know what's going to happen here, but I feel that there's something here for you. Mm-hmm. So funny enough, hers was in a creek bed too. Uh-huh. And we drove. Like, she's like, where the fuck are we going? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I'm like, I don't know. I think it's somewhere up here, you know? And we're checking, make a right here, make a left here, you know, turn here, park here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we park here. I'm checking which direction to go in. We go in the direction. I find this one particular spot, and I'm like, okay, just like chill here. You know, here's some water. Just chill here and just like meditate. Do whatever you want to do. Like sing, whatever. Do whatever you want to do. Just like sit here and see what happens. Mm-hmm. And she had this memory of a past life of hers where she like drowned her brother when they were living in some other civilization, like long ago. And she had some part of her had drowned her brother. And she connected with this guilt that she had felt through her whole life. This is a young lady. She doesn't do anything to hurt anybody, mm-hmm. you know, and really in this life, she really hasn't done anything much to hurt anybody, to where, you know, she wouldn't really have any reason to feel guilt. And what she was told is that because she's part Jewish, that generationally she inherited this survivor's guilt, mm-hmm. thing about surviving, you know, the Jewish Holocaust,
right?
Because some of her ancestors had survived the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. So that's what everybody said was, oh, this is survivor's guilt. You know, these mediums and things like this or whatever. I don't know who the hell she went to tell her that.
Yeah.
But in this 30 minutes where she sat there, you know, maybe an hour at the most, you know, I just took a walk around and I just walked and did my thing and came back. And she had this whole story that had unfolded for her. And she recovered a part of her. Mm-hmm. And so this is something that we could all do for ourselves. Like, yes, I could help other people do this, you know. Right. But the point is that with this very simple system, just working the system can guide you to, you know, these incredible things that are right here for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm completely new to divining and I want to get started. Can you walk us through the process of how like step by step how someone would get started learning this method of divining and using it?
Sure. First off, I would recommend people. Well, it's hard for me to recommend anybody to do what I didn't do. So I started with the linear system. You mm-hmm. know, I learned from Raymond Grace specifically, Hannah Kroger specifically, the linear way. The reason I usually recommend people to do the same thing is that they really have some good tools there, like teaching you to program your pendulum, teaching you to get genuine action from your pendulum. So I recommend that people do learn the linear and nonlinear methods because both of them are very useful. I still get yes-no answers sometimes through my pendulum. I'm not expecting to get them, but that's a language that the soul does speak.
Yeah.
So because I'm open to just whatever the information is, sometimes the pendulum does, just kind of register a yes. I'm like, what was that, a yes? Yes. Well, okay, yes then, or no, and so I recommend to learn those methods because it's a language, and it's also something that the collective, there's a lot of energy behind that method in the collective. Like, in other words, people know about it. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, I hit something. So I do recommend that people start there. And if you don't feel to start there and you just want to start with this method, then I recommend you do that. So with this method, harmony is counterclockwise. So when you say the word harmony and you focus on harmony, your pendulum should spin counterclockwise. If it doesn't, then program it in and say, okay, this way, and swing the darn thing. Swing it around like it's a backwards turning clock and say, this means harmony. And then swing it clockwise if it doesn't spin on its own when you say, show me disharmony or whatever, or you just speak the word in your mind or out loud, disharmony, your pendulum should begin spinning clockwise. If it doesn't, then make it spin clockwise. Don't say, well, for me, harmony is counterclockwise, or harmony is clockwise. And, for me, this is how it is my way. Like, that is, that's not the way to do it. Make it this way, because this is a universal thing that's set up this way. People oftentimes have their wires crossed within. There's a lot of ways that our internal wirings, have gotten crossed. So just make it this way. Make harmony counterclockwise, disharmony clockwise, and to where when you speak the word within you or out loud, harmony, you get a nice harmony spin. You get a nice counterclockwise spin.
And how about identifying a pendulum?
Well, you could really do the same thing. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit and tell you what dowsers told me that the problem in my old technique was when I was only getting 97% accurate readings. They all said this is an ego issue. Your ego's in the way. You're getting answers from your ego, right? But I'm not stupid. Like, when I'm talking to somebody, I can tell whether or not this person is, under the auspices of their ego. Like, basically, I felt like what they were telling me is before you have a 100% accurate divining method, you're going to have to be enlightened. Now, how is it that somebody who's not enlightened is giving me that piece of information? That's a piece of information that only really can accurately come from somebody who's enlightened. Because how could you speak about somewhere where you're not?
Right.
So the ego is something that I really do recommend people get into nurturing and understanding, because the ego always speaks up. The ego is a survival mechanism. Like, you, the real you, is the one who has all this information. Like, who the hell else has this information? Who are you asking anyway? Where are you accessing this ability to find water, so many hundreds or thousands of feet down, or even a foot down? You just underneath this rock is some water, How, who is that knows this? Well, it's you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the ego. The ego says, well, the damn water's at the store. You better get your ass out the desert and go to the store and get some water,
Right.
Because the ego is a survivor. The ego is also the whipping boy, the scapegoat of the entire dowsing and divining industry. We have all blamed the ego for all of our problems. And because that's what people were telling me. Your problem is the ego. You got to get rid of it. I'm like, fuck, I got to annihilate the ego. Mm-hmm. So I tried. And then I eventually saw the sense, the nonsense more like, in trying to destroy the survivor. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll tell you, the people who try and destroy their ego and talk all this shit about destroying the ego, you've got to annihilate the ego, they don't fucking know. Mm-hmm. They don't know the truth. The truth is, you don't mess with the survivor. The survivor is going to survive no matter what. It's not giving up. You wake up in the middle of the night after trying to destroy the ego all day, and it's got its hands around your throat. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I have this particular, so what I did with this divining method is I found where the home for all of our egos are, because I used to look around the body for the ego. Sometimes the ego would be in the stomach. Most of the times it would be in like my neck or my head. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, damn, this thing is like slippery. I find it here, then it's over here. Then I find it here, it's back over here. Like, the ego is not trying to get isolated like that, mm-hmm. And because it's a survivor. So the ego, first off, the ego took over whenever you, the master, had to leave your high place of knowing all of these things. Like, why are we even divining? Why am I even using a pendulum? Well, I'm using a pendulum because, in essence, like there's information that I need to get that I don't know consciously that I have. So I need a tool that helps me access this information. So the real you is like this non-linear, non-dimensional or hyperdimensional, I don't know what the hell to call the real you. Mm-hmm. It's like it's God, it's everything. If God is anything, then God is everything. So that means it's you. But you, the conscious you, don't understand that because you have really left who you really are. And when we leave who we are, the ego has to take over. Because the ego is going to survive in this world. It doesn't give a damn. It's going to survive. It's going to lie. It's going to steal. It's going to manipulate all situations to help you survive. Mm-hmm. So the ego is anything but evil. Mm-hmm. If anything, we should all do a little ass kissing when it comes to the ego, mm-hmm. in my opinion. A little like, thank you, ego, for keeping me alive all this time. Not like, I'm going to come beat your ass so you go away, And so what we teach, and I haven't heard anybody else teaching this, that's why I say that's what we teach at the Institute, is that the ego has a home. The ego's home that I found after finding that the ego's here, the ego's there, it's sometimes here, it's sometimes there, it's all over the place. Once you try and nail it down, it's somewhere else. But the ego's home is in the spleen. The spleen's located, please do just look at an anatomy chart yourself, find out where the spleen is. Mm-hmm. It's on the left side of the body. It's the lower part of the rib cage and right below and right at the lower rib cage. And the spleen is the home of the ego. So the ego might always be running around, but you can always access it through its home base. Mm-hmm. So what I recommend everybody to do is begin developing a relationship with the ego. The ego's always going to have an answer, but it's not always the right answer. In fact, when you're divining, you aren't looking for ego ego's answers. The ego can't give you the answers. If you're divining for an answer, the ego doesn't have the answer. So I recommend that everybody put one hand, two hands on the spleen, just like, well, really not two hands, but one hand at a time. And begin nurturing the ego. Calm the ego. The ego never wanted to take over 24/7. Mm-hmm. Like, it just didn't. It had to, so that you could survive. It's a survival mechanism. Like, nobody wants to have to be working, over 100 hours a week. Nobody.
Right.
And, but how many hours are there in a day? How often are people's egos really relaxed? Most people's egos aren't even relaxed in the dream world. Mm-hmm. They're running. They're trying to survive. They're being attacked. The ego's always active. So the best thing that I recommend people do in the beginning of divining is develop a relationship with the ego. Talk your ego down off the cliff. It's been driven mad because you have disappeared. You went away. The ego is not mad with power because it wants to be. It's mad with power because there's so much power in the universe and you are not stepping into your rightful place. So the ego has to take over so that you survive. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I recommend people do, really in the beginning of divining, is develop a relationship with the ego. Because basically, if there's not a car about to drive through your house, or a plane that's about to crash through your roof, or somebody's not coming through your house with a knife, or you're not about to put a poison in your mouth, then the ego should be sitting there and being quiet under most circumstances. But the thing is that there's a method of getting the ego to relax. And when I use the descriptor sometimes, that it's like it curls up in your lap like a good dog or like a good cat, and just kind of sits there and curls up and will just sit there and purr, and that's what you want. You want the ego chill. Mm-hmm. And while you're divining, you're not usually divining like your hair's on fucking fire. Right. That's usually not what's happening. You're usually divining whenever everything is safe. Everything's cool. I'm not starving. I'm hungry, but I'm not starving. Now I want to sit here and find this information. So at that point, you want to make sure that the ego is relaxed so that you're not getting information from the ego. Mm-hmm. So one of your original questions just now was, how do we find a pendulum?
Right.
That's part of how I got here, because you want to make sure that this pendulum is not in harmony with the ego. You want to make sure that it's in harmony with the greater part of you. So a lot of times, first off, the ego needs to be quiet when you're divining. And I tell the ego like this, like, look, I love you. I appreciate you. Oh, divine, super special, really awesome ego. You are amazing. You kept me alive all this time. I really deeply appreciate you. I'm listening. If I'm going to go check the mail and there's a runaway bicycle that I can't hear, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I know that you've got my back. You know about danger before it even happens. Mm-hmm. And I am listening if there's danger. Mm-hmm. But when I'm divining, sit there and shut up. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not asking you for the answers, because you don't have them. And you don't need to have them, little ego. You don't need to have the answer. You need to relax, because there's no danger here. I've got this. The master's home again. Mm-hmm. Some kind of dialogue that gets the ego to be quiet while you're divining. Because if you're divining, you're asking questions. And I use that term loosely, asking questions. You're gaining information, gaining access to the information within you that the ego does not have. The ego is going to make sure your body survives, but it can never get you to like a heavenly state of thriving. Mm-hmm. The ego can't do that. It's not within its power. That's not what it's there for. So this is why I'm saying the ego doesn't want to be in control all the time. In a healthy way, telling the ego to sit there and shut the heck up is the ego is going to be like, okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, you're back.
Right.
Thank God, because, I'm really ready for a rest any damn way.
Mm-hmm.
The ego, I've never found that there's an ego struggle whenever the master's home.
Yeah.
The ego wants to chill out, man. It doesn't want, none of us like working like that. So with the ego, it's like it's having to work overtime and then get its ass beat for it.
Uh-huh.
It's like, come on, man. This is, it's got to make sense. And what I'm saying about the ego, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense that we've got to destroy the ego. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense that it would want to answer all of our damn divining questions. Don't you think it's sick of answering all of our damn questions anyway? Mm-hmm. The thing's having to work overtime. It's time to give the ego a break. And like I said, when I said that it'll curl up on your lap and purr, that's the thing. It doesn't want to be working all the time.
Yeah.
So telling your ego to sit there and shut up when you're divining because you're not asking it for any answers. If you've got a loving relationship with the ego is like, great, it's about time.
Yeah.
Or just perfect. And it'll just curl up and rest. And then you can begin to access information. So from there, you can go into any store and begin holding up a pendulum up above the head is what I recommend, because up above the head is what I call the house of the higher self. Mm-hmm. For me, it's about, let me check, because of course, that's the thing with this divining technique. You got to check. You have the ability to check everything all the time. So I can never get into a stagnant place where I say the house of my higher self is 3 inches above the head, because what if it moves? Mm-hmm. So the house of the higher self of this one is about 3 to 4 inches above the head. So when I hold a pendulum and I check for harmony, I know that I'm essentially going to be looking to get most of my information from the higher self, ideally. Mm-hmm. So finding a pendulum that is in harmony with the higher self is a very useful thing. Now you can start with a key or a paper clip on a shoestring, mm-hmm. developing this technique. When you get to the point where you're ready to go buy a pendulum for yourself, I recommend to stick with the clear pendulums when it comes to the higher self, because they seem to just ring more clearly with the higher self. A lot of times amethyst or rose quartz might work. Sometimes hematite might work for a minute. Mm-hmm. But mostly I've found that clear quartz works for the higher self better than anything. Mm-hmm. And so you basically check the pendulum, check for harmony, make sure you're getting a good harmony spin, and then raise the pendulum up above your head and check that space up above your head for harmony with the pendulum. So in the same way you're checking harmony between food and orange, you check between the house of the higher self and the pendulum. It's the very same thing. Mm-hmm. One reference point is the higher self. The other one is the pendulum in your hand. You're mm-hmm. seeing if the two line up. You can also, if you can't find a pendulum that's in harmony with the higher self, always check and recheck first off. The beautiful thing about this pendulum, divining, the beautiful thing about this divining technique is there's a way that it invites you to check and recheck over and over and over again. Because as you develop these higher faculty energies, you will find that what was good for you yesterday is not good for you today. So there is no one store that you always go to, and I always get these oranges, unless you check all the time, and that's been the consistent factor.
Right.
But it's not a stagnant factor. You still check all the time. So another reference point that I use is the Sacred Heart, which is like the upper heart. It's in the thymus region.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can also take a pendulum if you can't find clear pendulums. A lot of times the rose quartz and the amethyst and stuff, they work really well with the heart energy. And so then you do basically the same thing. Check for harmony, make sure you got that spin going on, and then you raise the pendulum up to the heart energy, and one reference point is the Sacred Heart, and the other one is the pendulum in your hand, and you see if the two line up.
Mm-hmm.
If the two line up, then you get a really nice harmony spin between the two. If they don't, then you get disharmony.
Right.
Can we pause this for a moment?
Okay, we're back, and we were talking about finding a pendulum.
Okay, so this pendulum, by the way, I don't know if we've even said that the name of this technique. I divined looking for the name of this technique for over 5 years. I used this technique looking for its name. And the name of this technique is the quantum divining technique. So the reason that I say that in reference to the pendulum is I do call these pendulums your quantum divining pendulum. So your quantum divining pendulum can be used for any other divining system. But it's not necessarily true that other divining pendulums that are good for other systems are going to be great for this system. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
So one more question as we head towards wrapping up here. I'm wondering what kinds of changes you have seen in the lives of other people who have used this technique. If you can give examples of that or cite broader trends or anything.
Yeah. Well, I think that for one thing, the greatest thing that I feel the most joy about is helping people to know that they can access information for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to have a lot of people ask me, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in this situation? And so I stopped answering those questions, and because it doesn't matter what I do in any situation, what matters is you having the ability to access information for yourself. So one of the just greatest gifts is people's faith in themselves, their belief that, oh no, I have the answer. I might need to call Brandon to figure out how to find this answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a little, the question's a little complicated, or I just don't quite know where to look. But to me, one of the greatest gifts is that I can generally just tell people, well, this is how I would find that answer. And then boom, they're onto it. They can find the answer for themselves. We hang up the phone. I might talk to them in the next couple of days, and they're a changed person. They're a changed being. They've evolved. They've come into a greater knowing of themselves, a greater faith in themselves, just a more complete picture of, no, I can access this information on my own. And by the way, a lot of people have been insistent. It's funny, they all use the same term. What if I'm naked in the woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
They all use the same term. And I know exactly what you mean. And like I was describing in the beginning of this show, the way that people do body dowsing, in the same way, body divining with this technique is possible. So when I was describing body dowsing, just to recap, what I said was that if something is good for you or beneficial for you, your body will move forward. If it's not good for you, your body will move back. Well, in this system, your body will actually rotate counterclockwise for harmony, and rotate clockwise for disharmony. So that's to me the greatest thing that I just see consistently is people gaining a faith in their own ability to access information for themselves, period. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a really good place to stop. On this note of empowering people to gain information for ourselves and develop self-trust, basically, which to me is one of the most important faculties ever. So thank you so much, Brandon, for being on the show today. And I'm wondering if you could tell people where to find you on the internet, and if you have any upcoming events that you're doing that people ought to know about.
Yes, well, so right now you can find me at breatharian.com. That's BREATHARIAN.com. And the email for me is institute@breatharian.com. Very soon we're building a website right now for quantum divining, and that web address is quantumdivining.com. That's QUANTUMDIVINING.com. And as far as upcoming events, I will be doing some teaching events. I'm not really sure what the dates are at this point, like teleconference type stuff. But this summer, I'm teaching at the annual meeting of the American Society of Dowsers, and dowsers.org is their website. And I'm just checking the dates right now.
It's June 3rd to the 7th. I looked it up.
Oh, great. June 3rd through the 7th. So this year I've decided to just give a talk. I believe it'll be on Saturday, which is probably the 6th. And then I'm helping to facilitate a class on Sunday for children. And so I'll be there. And that's that.
And you're also on Instagram?
Oh, yes, I am on Instagram. So the Breatharian Institute has an Instagram page, which is Breatharian. I guess they do ats there, right? At Breatharian Institute. And my personal page is at Day, DEY, of America. And because my last name is Day, and so Day of America, and that's DEYOFAMERICA. That's the Instagram place. We do have a Facebook page, but it's not really in harmony with what we're doing. So I keep the Facebook page just so that I can run the Instagram page. So if you find me there and hit me up, I might not accept your thing there on Facebook, because I don't really like to connect with people through that forum. Right.
Okay. Well, I will put all those URLs and links and everything in the show notes so that people can find you with ease. And again, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for the great questions. And I look forward to maybe doing another one of these with you sometime.
All right. Sounds good. Fellow beings, thanks again for listening. Please do leave comments in the comment section or send feedback by email to Magelma, MADGELMA, @hotmail.com. For more episodes of Undercurrents, please visit helenzuman.com/podcast. For info about my memoir, Mating in Captivity, go to helenzuman.com/books. And until next time, metaphors be with you.